Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. We are John and Wendy Williams with the Short-Term Rental Authority, your authority for all things short-term rental related to help make you the best operator ever. And today we are going to be talking about what to do if someone has a party in your unit and the insurance that is related to short-term rentals.
And more importantly, how to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, there are several systems and processes. Processes?
Processes? I think that's right, actually.
Really?
Processes.
Processes. I really like processes because it makes you sound really smart.
Is this where you're like, how do you say that in English? What's the English word for?
Right. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the French way to say it.
Yeah, that's always a trick.
I
right?
never can remember. But anyway, so let's talk about the systems. Let's talk about the process first.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
So
that's the main thing, right? Is you got to have a process.
yeah, you got to have a plan.
You got to have a plan because it's going to happen.
It's going to.
It's not a matter of if.
It's a matter of when.
It's a matter of when.
And it's a matter of how are you going to deal with it.
Yeah.
And knowing that beforehand
Yes.
is critical. But I will say that, this is something a lot of people are afraid of. This is one of the big things that people worry about is, hey, I have this big investment. What happens if a bunch of people show up and trash it? How do I get my money back? How do I X, Y, and Z, right? What about the neighbors? Am I getting in trouble with the city? There's all this fear about it, right? And I just want to say up front that for one thing, it's actually kind of rare.
Yeah.
At least in our experience and the experience of other people we've coached. Some areas are more prone to it than others, depending on
and different property types are more prone to it than others as well, I would say.
That's true. And it's I know where you're going with that, but I also know that it's not just those properties. Sometimes it's the area that you're in and what price point you're at and stuff like that. So what's number one? What's the number one thing you should process that you should have in place to start with? And I would say it's your screening process.
Oh, I was going to say that too.
Okay. Because I think that's your first line of defense. That's why, your platforms like your Airbnb and your Vrbo and things like that are popular in a way, is because they do have, in a sense, some screening built in, right? So there's a review system. You can see if this person's had good reviews in the past, had good interactions with hosts in the past. You can see, have they gone through the process to verify their ID with the platform, right? So that's just another step of security and screening. And then beyond that, it's what is their initial first contact with you? What is that message? A lot of times I feel like that can give you a hint as to who's coming and what is their intent, right?
Right, because we typically ask people, what is the reason for your stay?
Yeah, and that's something you can automatically do on a platform like an Airbnb, where it actually has, at least for Instant Book, there are requirements. So I would say that's one thing you want to do is, Instant Book is something you actually probably want to have turned on, because it gives you more exposure. There are people that want to Instant Book, but on that platform, it also gives you the option to say, okay, for Instant Book, they have to meet these requirements.
For example, they have to have a verified identity, which means that on the platform, they have uploaded a copy of their photo ID, they have a verified email address, and they have a phone number.
And then you can also, there's like little sliders you can slide on or off. That's one option. Another option is, do they have recommendations from other hosts? In other words, have they gotten positive reviews? In other words, they've stayed with someone else who said, yes, they were a good guest, right? So that's a slider you can turn on. And then the third one, the reason I mentioned it was there's a third slider you can turn on that says, but it basically turns on a text box where you can ask them a question that they have to answer when they book. And ours typically is,
what's the reason for your stay?
Please tell us about your stay.
Yeah.
And there's a nice way to say that. You may say, so that we can best prepare for your arrival, please let us know the reason for your stay.
That's a good way to say it.
Right. And
Well,
what that does.
other than, why are you coming?
Right.
Are you going to have a party?
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people say no parties, and that's such a turnoff.
It is. Yeah. It can be. Yeah. So, I mean, that should be something that's in your house rules, but.
Well, we were going to talk about that next.
But yeah, let's gradually get there. Okay. So we're talking now about screening and that first message, and that's how you can prompt that first message. So that first interaction with what's the reason for your stay, if they say coming for my birthday, that might be a hint.
Right.
Or if they say coming for an event or family reunion with my family, now you might want to ask some questions.
Right.
Are you planning on having it at our
Right.
place?
Right.
Or
Now I've got questions.
Right. So it's that initial interaction that can kind of start that conversation. And I think that's a really important part of screening.
And I would say that some people who are going to have those that are more likely to have a party in your place tend to be a little bit younger.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So
oftentimes.
So I don't know if there's really a way to prevent people, young people, from booking your place.
Well, that's technically that's a function of your state law and maybe local law.
Oh,
so
okay.
you want to look that up to make sure you're actually in compliance, because there are certain things that you can't just say, hey, you got to be 30.
Right.
Right. Or
Right.
you got to be 25. I know people do it, but you might want to look and say, hey, is that even something that's applicable in my area? Is that
Right.
something that I can legally do even though I'm doing it? Right. And then yes, on the platforms themselves or wherever you advertise, you can say must be 25 or 21 or whatever your threshold is that you can do. You can actually make that a requirement in the rules, but there's no way to enforce that
Right.
really on the platform.
Right.
And that's the downside to relying on, like, say, an Airbnb's ID verification. Yeah, they've done it, but they're not going to share it with you, the host.
No, they're not. That's the
And
part that I don't like.
Yeah, there's no way to really know. And even really, if you read their terms of service, it says when possible we will
Right.
X, Y, and Z.
Right. Sure.
So do you know if it was possible that time?
Right.
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 And it becomes even more hairy when it's someone coming from a foreign country, because now it's a passport. It's not a driver's license with an address on it. Passports don't have addresses.
Right.
So you can verify that's a passport, but do you really know if that's that person's passport?
Right.
Right. And so there's that kind of thing going on. And mostly I want to say that it's just, we don't have access to it as a host.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So you were asking about the age thing. Like, we don't really know.
We don't really know.
We can say you can't book it, and we will have people ask. Like, that's one of those first questions that can raise your suspicion, maybe?
Yeah.
Or just you need to do a little more investigation.
Right.
Because we've had that first message be simply, is age an issue? I'm like, well, if you have to ask, it probably is.
Right. That's a red flag right there.
Right. So now I've got questions.
Right.
Right. So it's that first interaction, a lot of times will give you the thing, even on age. But yet to say not everybody under 25
No, not at all.
going to have a party, and not everybody over 25 isn't.
Right. No.
Because we've had both.
Sure.
Right.
No doubt.
So it's something to think about, but it's not an absolute.
Right.
It's I
just wanted to bring it up because it is a thing.
Yeah. And people think that.
Yeah.
Like that's a concern.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to say, especially for even initiated, like a lot of times they just want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of it. And I get why there are reasons to question that, but it's not I'm just saying that, you don't want to be discriminatory just because someone's 24 and not 25.
Right.
That's is that magical?
Right.
No. Right.
Right. Well, so that's the very first step in verifying, screening guests. Ask them, what is the reason for your stay? Right.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe turn on some of those controls so
Right.
they can't instant book it unless they meet
Right.
certain requirements.
But you can't do that on Verbo.
No, Verbo does not have that
No,
feature.
it doesn't.
Right.
Right.
So now you've added another platform, now you've got a hole in your system.
Yep.
Because you can't rely on that anymore. And you certainly can't when you go to booking.com.
But when you move on to the next thing, the next process is, now that you have asked them the reason for their stay, you can also put some things in place, for example, house rules in place, and just so that people know that events and parties are not allowed in your space.
Yeah. So you should have a robust set of house rules. And we always say they should be in the format of, here's the rule, here's the penalty if you violate the rule.
Right. It's meaning monetary.
Or it could be, hey, you got to leave.
Right.
Right. So it's like smoke in the unit, $250. Have a party, immediate cancellation of reservation. Right.
With no refund.
With no refund. So, but that's kind of the format of house rules you want to have. And in, like you were saying, in the spirit of, you're in the hospitality business, don't lead with the house rules.
Right.
Say, hey, please go read all these rules.
Right.
Here's this long list of things. Like, you want them there, but you don't want to be aggressive about it necessarily.
Yeah, it's a turnoff.
So it's always like firm, this is our policy, it's business, but we are in the hospitality business. So don't go overboard and start scaring people away. Because I see people go way too far the other direction too.
Totally.
Right.
And they wonder why they have a problem.
Yeah. They're like, why are people irritated with me? Well,
I wonder.
You're aggressive,
Right.
and you come out
Right.
accusatory.
Right.
Is the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And most people don't have malintentions.
No, they don't.
And most people are really great guests. You just want to have those processes in place that, for the few that do, but don't let one bad apple spoil the whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But having having that in the house rules, so it says there's no parties, and if you do have a party, then your reservation will be canceled with no refund.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit, because it's not. We don't just say don't have a party or this, because if you have a rule like that, they'll just say, well, it's not a party. We just have people over.
Right. You got to be real definitive of what exactly a party is.
Right. So we don't actually say no parties. Yeah. We say maximum occupancy at all times is
such and such,
whatever the max occupancy is. So if it's a place that holds 6 people, there should never be more than 6 people there.
Correct.
You shouldn't have more people at the place than is on your reservation.
Correct.
Right. Anybody that stays after 10 o'clock is considered an overnight guest. And here's the penalty for unauthorized overnight guests.
That's a really good point.
Like, that's really specific, because what you don't want to get into is, oh, they're not staying here, they're just hanging out. Because then it becomes this nuanced thing of, well, are they violating your rule or not? And you're kind of arguing back and forth. And to me, somebody that stays till 3 a.m. was overnight, whether they slept or not.
Sure.
Right. So that's why we have that cutoff. So we say, okay, here's the max number of people that can be there. Here's the cutoff time for when you become an overnight guest. Here's the penalty for overnight guests if they're undisclosed. And hey, don't show up with more people in your reservation than you're supposed to have. And you can even go as far as say, hey, if you're going to have guests, that's fine, but let us know who and when and where. And it's all in how you phrase it, because that's a potential security issue. Like, if you said you had 2 people on your reservation, and all of a sudden I see like 3 other people coming in, I'm genuinely concerned for your safety. Like, do you know these people are here?
Right.
Like, are they getting into your stuff, or, did you leave the door unlocked or something? Like, I need to inquire, but that's not accusatory. It's more, hey, we noticed this. What's going on? Are you aware? Right. And then here's the set of house rules. So that's how you can use those things in combination to prevent and head off we're really talking about the worst thing that can happen as far as general things, other than somebody dying or something like that.
Right.
somebody coming to your house, having a big party and trashing it basically and disturbing the neighbors and possibly getting you kicked out and,
Yeah.
all these things that you see that happen.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Well, okay.
But that's before arrival.
Right. So now we've got it so that we've asked them the reason for their stay. We've posted it in the house rules.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the max occupancy. There's no more than X number of people that can be in the unit at any one time. If anyone stays after, 10 p.m., for example, they're considered a guest. Here's the fee for undisclosed guests,
Mm-hmm.
and here's what's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got penalties in the house rules. So let's say someone violated those house rules and it's midnight and there are lots of people in the unit. Let's say there's twice as many people in the unit. How do you know that there are that many people? And what kind of system do you have in place that notifies you of that's what's happening?
Got it. So it shouldn't get to that place is the actual answer, because there's a step in between that.
Oh, what is it?
So it's not just we screen people and then they come and we don't know. It's been implied that, we know who's coming in and out, and we do that through our door camera system. And if you have any other entrance to the property, like some of our properties are houses, you want some sort of video surveillance on any entrance. Because what people will do is they'll just come around the back.
Right.
And you
So
won't
you
see
can
them.
have video surveillance on all the entrances.
Yes. And so part of our check-in process is when somebody comes, we verify, did they show up with the number of guests that were on the reservation? So if it was booked by, a lady and her 2 kids and like 5 dudes show up with a keg,
Right.
that might be cause for concern.
Which has happened to us
Yeah,
before.
I mentioned that specifically because it happened. In their case, I think it was a giant bag of weed, but
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you show up with a beer pong table, now we know your intent.
Yeah.
Right. And now I don't have to wait until midnight
Sure.
when there's 25 people there, because now I can intervene at the moment of discovery.
Right. It's because we have someone watching the cameras that verifies their ID and has their reservation. They know who's supposed to be coming, what that person should look like,
Mhm.
and has that. And did the number of people check in that said they were going to be checking in, and does that look like that person on that ID?
Yeah. And does their behavior match what they said they were coming for?
Right.
Right. So that's your second line of defense. It's your check-in process, and it's and you alluded to, hey, I've got processes that, hey, every day at this time we check this, or every day there's a check-in, we check as they check in, are they good? Right. And part of that's, were they able to get in? Like, I want to know that too.
Sure.
But part of it is verifying who they are and, what are they bringing in and all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
So we've actually headed off those. That's probably why we haven't had a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Because when they show, you kind of know when they show up what's about to go down.
Right.
And then later on, as maybe even the right number of people check in, but then more people show
Yeah,
up, and more people show up. Well, that's the time to kill the party before it gets started.
Sure.
But to your
there's
point,
somebody monitoring
Yeah.
the cameras.
yes.
That's
So that's actually the next step.
the
But
system.
yeah.
So the system is that first of all, you got to have cameras.
yeah,
I mean, that's necessary.
yeah, and
Right.
we go further than that, and put the whole security system in
Yeah,
there,
for sure.
because another indicator that might be, well, how many times is the door opening and closing?
Yep. We get notified of that as well.
Right. If it's opening and closing, then that might be an indication something's going on, which can happen because people will come and they'll cover your camera.
Ooh.
And now
That's
you need a
good.
backup.
Mm-hmm.
You need backups. Like, okay, well, is the door opening and closing a lot? We can see that. Or the windows opening and closing. We can see that.
Yep.
Right. And that's an indication that, well, first of all, they covered the camera. And 2, now the doors or windows are opening. Okay. That's a sign.
Right.
right? And then this more alludes to what you were talking about, like, how do I know what's going on? Well, we also put inside the units, we use a product called Noise Aware. There's another product that they're called Minute that's similar. We like Noise Aware better for various reasons. But what it does is it monitors the noise level inside of the unit.
Right. It doesn't monitor. It can't record what you say.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to record inside the unit at all.
No,
in any capacity.
There's nothing inside the unit that records.
Right. But it's recording loudness is decibel level.
Decibel level
is what it's recording.
It's recording the decibel level inside the unit. So you set it to a certain threshold.
Yep.
And it notifies you if it goes above that threshold.
Yeah. And they even have the automated system in there where if it crosses a threshold, it will actually contact your guest on your behalf.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah. We don't actually use that because we've got staff and other people to do it, but it does have that feature, which I think is really cool.
That's neat. Noise Aware does?
Yeah, it does. But it's another alert to say, hey, there might be a problem here. It could be that it could not be a problem. Maybe they're watching a loud movie or something.
Right, sure.
But it alerts you to say, okay, I need to investigate further what's going on.
Right.
And I'll point out also that it can also be in your defense. So say a neighbor says, hey, this place is always really disruptive and loud, and it's not. Now you've got the actual evidence to say, well, here's the record of the noise level, because it keeps that too. And to say, well, during this period of time, it wasn't loud, right? Or it was, right? It's very objective evidence, either in your favor or not. But the primary purpose is to alert you if there's a problem, right? So that's yet another line of defense.
Sure. So now we've got the noise monitoring inside the unit. We've got the doorbell cameras on all the entrances. We've got the key system that will tell you when the door is opening and closing, and even if the windows are being opened and closed.
Yeah. If somebody smokes in there, the alarms.
And if somebody smokes in there, yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can monitor that as well. And what's cool about the security system that we use is Vivint. And what's cool about Vivint is you can see all of that in one app.
Yeah. So it's all one central location.
And you can even see the thermostat.
Yes. So you can see all sorts of things. You can see if there's movement inside the property. So you can tell if it's vacant or not.
Sure.
Right. Just through that system without even having the cameras. So there's multiple backups to multiple backups, right?
Okay. You never want to have a single point of failure.
Yes. And then there's a third device you can use that it's called Party Stopper. We do not actually use this in our unit.
Oh, okay.
We could.
Okay.
And what it does is it alerts you to how many devices are present.
Ooh, I've heard of that. Yeah, that was really cool.
So if all of a sudden you see like 30 cell phones in your apartment or something, hey, something's up.
So it can see what kind of device is, or how many devices are connected to the network.
That's the idea. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's called Party Stopper. Ooh, that's cool.
So it's yet another backup to a backup.
Right.
So it's not that you use one system and not the other. It's like, hey, use all of these so that, if one of them, your internet goes down, well, Noise Aware doesn't work anymore.
Right. Sure.
For example, but Vivint still does because it has cellular backup, which is why we don't use Ring doorbell cameras.
Cool. That is a nugget right there.
Because there's single point of failure, internet, right? And you cover the camera, you have nothing else, right? So it's those systems together that help you prevent and detect, because really you should be the first person to know. It shouldn't be,
yeah, for sure.
Hey, your neighbor calls you and says, hey, this thing's going down.
Right.
Or your landlord calls you and says, hey, what's going on at 246 Main Street?
Right.
Like, you should know before they know. And if you're using those systems together and you're monitoring them.
Well, see, I think that is really big. Monitoring.
Yeah, you have to monitor.
Yes. And if it's you right now, like you don't have a customer experience specialist yet, then it's you.
Yeah, but you should still have a process.
Yes, you definitely should still have a process, but you have to follow your own process.
Yeah.
and it's you at first.
And we talk about that a lot.
So do it.
Build your system to say, and ours just in the beginning was every day at 11:30, we
change
door codes, but we're also checking all the systems. Are they all up and running?
Right.
Is everything as it should be?
Yes.
Review the footage from the previous 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever.
Right.
Say, was there anything going on that we need to address? And then once checkout, or that's check out, and then once check-in happens,
you do this.
You're monitoring the same thing, like who's coming, are they the right people, and then monitor everything else too to say, hey, is everything else good?
Sure, like look at the thermostat.
Well, I was thinking multiple units, but you're right. Yeah, thermostat and everything else.
Like, are the batteries low, or in the front door lock, or something like that, right? So you're monitoring everything.
But then that becomes the process that you document.
Yeah.
Then when you have someone else doing it, you've already established this is how we do it.
Yes.
And this is the importance of it, because it prevents these types of things from happening. So a lot what we're talking about is not really how to deal with it so much, it's how to prevent it to begin with. And, that screening and then the technology is a big piece of it.
Yeah. And the monitoring.
Yes.
That's really big too.
So now to your point.
So now let's say,
despite all of
that,
now you've detected there is a problem.
There is a party going on.
And this is happening. It can happen quickly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So they can check in, everything looks fine, and then all of a sudden cars start arriving.
Yep.
And people start getting out.
Yep.
6 at a time. And all of a sudden your noise aware is going off, and you see the doors open and closing, and you check the cameras, and sure enough, driveway in the yard's full of people, and you're like, well, what's going on here? What do you do?
What do you do?
Right. So what's the procedure once that happens?
Okay.
And I want to say some of that is procedural, and some of that is again relying on the technology that you've pre-planned to set up. Right.
Okay. You're putting me on the spot here, because it's been a hot minute since I have reviewed this SOP.
Well, that's not true, because you had to get rid of somebody.
Well, that's true.
Not for a party.
That's true.
It was actually an overstay.
She didn't check out on time.
So these kind of procedures are basically like, how do I remove somebody from a unit?
Yeah, right.
In general.
Right.
But in this context, it's like we're using it in the context.
So the first thing that we do is we message them through the messaging system and say, hey, we've noticed that there are more guests than stated on the reservation, or something like that. Or
yeah, you're right. A member of our security team has notified us that there's more
guests than
stated on the reservation. Currently, we see X.
Yeah.
Can you please advise?
Please advise. And then we give them like 5 minutes to respond or something like that.
Yeah, right? It's a short period of time.
It's very short. It's very short. And if they don't respond within 5 minutes, I believe we call them on the phone.
Well, it gets escalated to a text message.
Okay, so we text them. And then if they don't text back within 5 minutes, then we call them on the phone.
Then it gets escalated to a phone call.
Right. And if there's no response.
And you still may not have a response.
Right, sure, because they're having a party. They're busy.
Yeah. Or the people that rented it might not even be there anymore.
That's exactly right.
That's happened.
That's happened.
Yeah.
Yep. So if that happens, then do we set off the alarm in?
What he doesn't know all the processes. This is hilarious.
I don't.
I shouldn't have. I was giving you an opportunity.
It's been so long. It's been so long.
But you're getting it right. So yeah. So you're going to basically at that point, it comes down to, are they on platform or not? And if they're on platform, for example, like an Airbnb, I'm going to contact them.
We got to contact them.
And it's not for help. Just
no. It's like, here's what's just about to go down, what I'm just about to do. I'm just letting you know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, because they're not going to do anything but
I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you.
Yeah, they're just going to call them too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
and we've already done that.
Thing.
So,
but here's something that we need to point out is you need to message them through the messaging platform, so that you have documentation that you've done it.
Yeah.
Because when you call Airbnb, they're going to say, have you done that? And you say, yes, here's the evidence that I've done that.
Right. It's in the messaging center. So that's kind of the, it's a nuance of communicating with the platform, but yes, they want to see documentation and evidence
Well, there you go.
objectivity. Because
Sure.
and okay, I am recording all this on my camera, and I have my noise aware data, and I have my other
But yeah,
stuff
they're going to want to see
say,
that too.
here's
You have to
actually
pick
what
somebody
happened,
out. Mhm.
right? But to the point, I'm calling them to inform them of what's happening, and that I'm about to end this reservation, because that
For this reason, because they've broken this house rule.
yeah, and they've got 25 people up in there having a party, and we clearly say no parties in our
Yeah.
house rules,
Right.
right? So I always find that interesting when, because people, you tend to think, hey, I'm going to call them and they're going to help me, and they might,
Right.
they might make a phone call, but realize there's somebody in a cubicle farther away than you are probably, and they don't have the Airbnb police to send down there,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I mean, they just can't. So they're there to notify and say, hey, your guest that came through your platform, here's what we're about to do because of this, right? And then you execute the next part of the plan, which is ultimately notifying them once again that if this doesn't end in the next 15 minutes and all these people aren't out, and I say 15 minutes specifically because don't let this go on for an hour.
Oh, no.
Don't give people 2 hours to leave,
no.
or an hour. It's like 20 minutes, 15,
max.
20 minutes.
Max.
Then the authorities are going to come. And then because we have that security system in place, we can remotely set that alarm off just for a minute and then turn it off and let them know that, hey, the sound you just heard, if you're not out in 15 minutes, will become constant, and the authorities will arrive and you will be removed from the property. And to do that, you're going to want to stage someone.
Yes, this is critical.
So it's either you or it's your representative within 5 minutes of that place,
Yeah.
so that they can now meet the authorities if that becomes necessary at the property.
Yes, because that person that meets them there will need to have certain documentation.
Yeah, and to be able to explain what's going on.
Yes.
So we've had to do this before. So the alarm goes off, the police officers arrive within 7 minutes because it's a verified alarm. So it's not like, hey, I called the sheriff's department on the phone. No, they got a call from Vivint saying, hey, there's an active alarm at this property. They come within 7 minutes. And that's why you want to be staged close by.
Yeah, you better have somebody there.
Yeah. And then when the police come, you explain to them that this is a guest in your property. They are no longer welcome to stay. They are now trespassing on your property. Would they please help you
Right.
remove them?
Right. And that's the key word.
And
They're
that's
trespassing.
Yes, because realize that here's another thing people get tripped up on is realize the police only deal in criminal activity. So have these people violated a law? Because if you just say, hey, they're renters off of Airbnb,
Right.
and I don't want them here anymore,
Oh,
their first thought is going to be landlord tenant.
Yep.
Sorry, we can't do anything. You need to take them to court and get them evicted.
yep.
Because we only deal with, that's a civil case. We only deal with criminal.
Right.
Right. Now, sometimes they will actually help you. Like they'll go in and say, we can't make you leave, but we
That's
highly advise that you do.
That's true.
But, and that can be helpful too. But it's more of it feels like you're always educating in this business, but you kind of want to be there to educate and say, hey, here's the thing they're violating. They're not tenants. They never were tenants. Here's our lease. They don't even have a key to the place. They have no lease. There's 25 people here having a party. This is my space. They're guests. I've asked them to leave. They won't. Please help me. And that's going to be your best chance for getting the authorities to actually assist you in ending this thing. Now, the fact that the police even showed up is going to get people to leave.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of times they don't want to be involved with that at all.
Right.
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 Like at all.
Right.
And this probably isn't the first time they've been to a party and the police showed up. Right.
Right.
So they know you leave when the police show up. Right. And that's the ultimate, but that's the nuclear option. I mean, once you go there,
Yeah.
you got to be prepared for that. And then it's a little more serious. And now that's your ultimate nuclear option. So we don't pull that button there a lot.
No.
right?
We have that.
You usually don't have to get to that
Yeah.
point.
But it's nice to know that it's there if you need it.
Yeah, because you've got teeth,
Yeah.
because you've got that system in place, and you've got a way to have the authorities, people that that's what you really want, people that they fear. The authorities, the people that are licensed to have the firearms.
Yeah. Right.
And put you in jail.
Right.
Right. That's who you want on your side, not necessarily your local rent-a-cop. Right.
Right.
I've seen people do that, but do they really fear them? Not really, because they know they can't do anything to them.
Right.
Right.
Well, let's say that you called the cops, they've been escorted out, and now they've trashed the place and damaged something.
Okay.
Let's say they've done like somebody's punched a hole in the wall.
Okay.
Like it got that far. Somebody punched a hole in the wall.
Yeah. So it depends is the answer. So if there's a platform, like on Airbnb, there's air cover, but we all know how great that is.
Right. Okay.
If you've ever dealt with trying to get something covered, then that's just a pain in the butt. But it's there. It's there. That's what it's for to a certain degree. But we also have, on top of that, our own insurance. We recommend proper.insure.
Proper.insure.
So if there is damage above whatever the deductible is for that, ours is like $1,000. But if it goes beyond $1,000, then it becomes an insurance claim of property, right? And they're going to start covering the damages and the monetary stuff to fix it.
Right.
So it depends on how extensive it is, but I will say our main goal is get it back up and running.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So our main goal isn't sit around and dick around with, I shouldn't say dick around, but mess around with Airbnb and, get those claims processes started. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And document everything, because remember, you have the documentation, you have the noise aware, you have the pictures of what it looked like before, don't you? Because your cleaners do that. Yeah. And now you have the pictures of what it looks like now, and you have the communications you've had with the guest. You have the fact that, hey, the police showed up, right? That's a police report. And you have all these things that now you can package and say, here's what happened. This reservation canceled and our calendar opened back up so we can re-rent these to someone else, right? And now our job becomes, okay, call our cleaners and say, hey, you got a cleaning job tomorrow. That's the main thing.
Yep.
Get this place up and running and clean.
Or the maintenance
Or
people.
maintenance. Hey, you've got a hole to patch tomorrow on the wall.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we've got to order a new table and get that over there so we can get, because the idea is like get this thing back up and rented and ready to go again and turned over.
Right.
That's the main thing. And then secondary to that is recovering damages either from the guests themselves through the resolution process on Airbnb or through the insurance process on VRBO, because there's a different process over there, or through your own insurance, or however I'm doing this. If we even take direct bookings. So if we had a direct booking, we charge their credit card that's on file.
Yep.
And we have an agreement with them that says we're going to do that, right? So we've done these steps in place to where we have teeth, we have legality to do it, and hopefully you shut all this down in a short period of time where it wasn't really a problem for anybody else, and it can actually make you look good.
Yeah, for sure. We had a student, a lady that we coach in Go. Mm-hmm. That recently had this happen.
And in her case, it wasn't a party though. It was a lady of the night.
Oh, that's
that had
right.
Set up shop, and
a lady of the night set up shop.
And from beginning to end, I think it took her, well, for her first suspicions that something might be going on to realizing that it was going on to getting this lady out was, I think she said like 4 hours or something. Long time, actually.
Yeah.
But it was only 4 hours of it.
Right.
It wasn't overnight and she found out the next day because somebody complained.
But she's doing the rental arbitrage model, and her landlord, hey, great job.
Well, he just gave her another unit.
Yeah. It just gave her another unit.
Because she proved that.
Yes. She could handle herself.
She could handle it and address any problems. Not that problems aren't going to happen, but that she has the systems and processes and wherewithal to address them
Yeah.
and
Yep.
handle them in a systematic manner.
Yeah.
And I say systematic because that becomes more and more important as you scale,
Wait, not the truth.
right? Because now you've got 15, 20 of these things. And what are your procedures? And what are your people going to do? So it's not oh my God, they're having a party. What do we do? It's here's our escalation process. Here's our procedures. We very calmly know what we're going to do and hope we don't have to get to the end of it. And normally you don't. Normally you never get to the place where the cops actually come.
That's true.
But if they do, you can get there.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing that you can get there makes the rest of this very calm. Because it's like, hey, if you don't, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
Right. So that's the process, the procedure. That's how you prevent it. Recovering from it is get the unit back up immediately, the claims with whoever you're going to file them with, and move on with your day. Right. And get more units.
Yep. Get more units. And
know that, okay, now
to
I've done the 1 out of 200 people that do that.
right.
Right. In fact, I think we've had to remove people, well, that way twice ever
I want to say that's true.
out of hundreds
I
of
can't
reservations.
I can't think of any other.
But a big piece of that is because of the screening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the screening, so that it never gets there. So we're always like prevention first, screening first, when people check in, having your devices in place, having your escalation method for communication, and then ultimately having your process for removal. And you put all those things together, and all of a sudden, parties are an annoyance. It's really an annoyance anymore than it is hey, I'm scared of it.
Right.
It becomes instead of I hope they don't, it's not.
Yeah. I wish somebody would.
Right.
I wish somebody would have a party in my unit.
Who was that? That was Cedric the Entertainer.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. I don't wish.
I don't wish. I don't know. It's I don't hope.
I don't hope. I wish. I hope they don't do that. It's like, I wish they would.
That's right.
Right?
I wish somebody would. I hope nobody has a party in my unit. I wish somebody would have a party in my unit.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. So that's it. I think
there you go.
Did you have anything to add to that?
I can't think of anything else because that's really great. So we hope that you found some value because we dropped some major nuggets in this podcast. So be sure to like and subscribe because we have so many nuggets to drop in future episodes. So come back and see us again and we will drop some really great nuggets in the next couple episodes. Oh, we've got some really great ones coming up because we have speakers coming to talk to us. So thanks for joining us and we will see you next time. On to the next.
On to the next.
Nicely done.